Just so everybody knows. Welcome to Force Connect on the streaming Star Wars network. I got that right, even though Pete's not here. Happy Friday. I am one of your hosts of Force Connect, Nick Milkey. I am joined, as always, by my partner in crime, Mr. Chris Ryans. Chris, how are you this evening?
Man, I'm doing good, and I am so excited to be talking to my buddy, my bro.
That's right.
Kerwin,
He's
Yarde,
here.
Father Son Galaxy.
Filling in case you didn't notice, Pete is not with us tonight. He is recovering from a overnight flight back from the West Coast. He's crashed hard. But we are so excited because Kerwin is here. Kerwin, as y'all know, along with his excellent son, Keith, are the hosts of Father Son Galaxy. Kerwin, how are you tonight? And thank you so much for being here.
Oh, man, I'm filling Pete's shoes tonight. I don't know. But I am honored to be here. Thank you so much. I'm just so excited to just, sit and talk with the fellas about Star Wars or anything else we want to bring up. So
absolutely. Well, it's going to be a fun night. Absolutely. It's going to be a fun night. We've got several things planned, several things in store. Yeah. We're going to kind of see where the direction takes us. As always, we take calls throughout the show. We say it's like sports talk radio for Star Wars. We're going to throw the link in the chat here in just a second. We want our friends to call in. We want to hear from you about any of the topics we're talking about tonight. If you've got something on your mind, we try to keep the calls a little bit quick so we can keep it moving. We can get as many folks as we can in with us. But that's what we want to do. We want to hear from you. We want you to be a part of the show. As we get started tonight, I'm going to throw it to Chris for housekeeping in just a second, but I have something important to say. And if anybody is a regular watcher of this show, they're going to realize how momentous this is. I've told Chris already, he knows, but it's important that I say it in front of a live studio audience, as it were. I went to a comic book shop today, Chris.
Yeah.
And for all the hell that Pete and I give Chris about comics and how we just don't read them, there's nothing wrong with them, they're just not our bag, whatever. I have a local comic shop literally less than a mile from my house, and I was passing by it today. We won't talk about the fact that it was because it's next door to the liquor store that I needed to stop at after work, but I did. I stopped into my local comic shop, and I did not buy comic books proper, but this comic shop also usually has a couple of fun little vintage things, some magazines, some books. So very, very quickly, and this doesn't translate to audio, but it's worth showing anyhow. And I'm going to pull myself up large for 1/2 second. I found this. I've never seen this before. This is the Star Wars Empire Strikes Back Mix and Match storybook. It's Random House Publishing.
Mm-hmm.
You open it up, and it's got all these little sections. And it's almost like Mad Libs. Like you flip them over, and there's all these different pages, and the story continues along the bottom. And so it's kind of funny and funky. And it was amazing, and I've never seen that before. So I had to grab that because I'm a vintage guy. Things that connect to my childhood. And then also, I found the Star Wars album. And this is one of those magazines, kind of like a collector's guide that they put out. This one, I think, is April 78. And you open it up, and it's got all the behind-the-scenes pictures. It's got... just you name it, stories, how things were going. And then, of course, one of my favorites is the Hildebrandt artwork on the back of it.
Yeah.
I had to grab those. So I did not buy comics, but I did lower myself enough to go into a comic book store.
Did you say lower yourself?
Who, me? I don't know what you're talking about. I think your audio's messed up. But anyhow, moving right along, Chris, we've got some housekeeping stuff that we like to do, and normally Pete does it, but you're going to handle that this week. So tell us what we've got.
Yeah. Now, bear with me, guys. I'm doing this for the first time, so I'm going to speak as eloquently as possible when I say all this. Time to do a little bit of housekeeping, as we do every week. Make sure you follow us on all of our socials. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube at Streaming Star. I'm sorry. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube at Streaming Star Wars, and on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at the SSW Network. You can check out our website at www.streamingstarwars.com. And while you're there, click that link to check out our merch store. We got a lot of dope tees there, like the Bad Backs, the Around the Galaxy logo, the Podcast of the Wheels logo, the Force Connect logo. We got those as well. A lot of those shirts and more. And also consider checking out our Patreon page and supporting us old smoothies as we do what we love to do, and that's talk Star Wars with all of you. That rhymed like poetry.
Yeah. Look at you. Nailing it. Normally we have a fancy little graphic to put up on the screen that has all of our social media channels and where to find them. Pete's not here. I don't know where that is, so I couldn't find it. So check it out. Like Chris said, streamingstarwars.com is the easiest place. It's your one-stop shop for all that mess. The links work. We checked those out. They're all accurate this week. So hit that up. If you're interested in being a patron, I can do this real quick. This is fun. This is a new thing. They added QR codes to the restream. So if you're watching right now, if you're not a patron right now, for as little as $3 a month, you can tune in live when we record episodes of Around the Galaxy with our guests. Check out the behind the scenes before the edited audio version comes out. We've got swag. I know Pete's got some stuff he's sending out in the mail this next week to our patrons. It just helps support the work we do, the stuff that we get to do, the shows we get to put on. So if you want to scan this, if you're not already a patron, hit it up. We'd love to have you be a part of our little family. Or you can find it on the website, buy some t-shirts, all that great nonsense. Gentlemen, it's Friday night, it's Force Connect, and it would not be an episode of Force Connect if we don't have a toast of some kind. And that's usually my department, and it is going to be my department again today. I'm going to see if I can share a screen real quick because I wanted to throw a picture up here. Chrome tab. Here we go. Let's do this. Did it show up? There it is. Okay. I'm going to throw a toast this week to, it is Black History Month. I think that is something that's very important to acknowledge. It's something that is important. For many of you, you know, I grew up in Selma, Alabama. I live in Montgomery, Alabama. If you know anything at all about the history of our country, the civil rights movement took place in both of those places very, very significantly. Has nothing to do with me other than the fact that I grew up in it, and is something that I'm very, very aware of. And it's very important to me to honor these people. My kids do Black History projects every year during this month, and it's something that I think is so special. And I love that they get a chance to learn about that. And that doesn't just stop at school and those kinds of things. And so tonight, my toast is actually to Ashley Boone Jr. And I don't know if anybody watching knows who Ashley Boone Jr. is. I'm sorry I can't zoom this picture in a little bit more. I don't know how to do that on here. Ashley Boone Jr. worked in marketing in the movie and TV industry in the 60s and 70s. And honestly, he is the reason why Star Wars had the success that it had from a marketing standpoint in 1977. You can go back and read. There's a really great Hollywood Reporter article that I found that I'll link on Twitter after the show's over with. It's really worth getting into. He worked on Ghostbusters. He worked on a bunch of different movies. He was at one point the first African-American president of Fox Studios. That only lasted a very short period of time because there was some behind the scenes nonsense that wasn't super cool that ultimately kind of demoted him. But the decisions he made around release strategy and publicity strategy and those kinds of things were directly responsible for the success of Star Wars. We've all heard the apocryphal stories of how George Lucas, when Star Wars came out, left and went to Hawaii because he didn't want to be here and he wanted to hide out on the beach. Mm-hmm. Ashley Boone Jr. was the one that was calling him, giving updates about how much money it was making and how many tickets were being sold and all that kind of stuff. Truly a significant figure in the history of Star Wars that has kind of been lost to history. He passed away in 1994 from cancer. And, you know, he was honored, you know, through, you know, several of the motion picture associations. There's an award named after him. Somebody that's very, very significant. And so I'm excited honored to get the opportunity to raise a toast tonight in honor of Black History Month and in honor of something that is so significant to Ashley Boone Jr. So I raise my glass to him and to all of our friends watching tonight. Cheers and happy Star Wars.
Cheers. That was beautiful. Thank you.
Gentlemen.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break. And when we get back from that break, we are going to get into some of the news of the week. There's actually been a good bit of stuff going on. We're going to kick it around. We've already got some friends hanging out in the background. I'm excited to get some of our callers in here. So everybody hang tight. I'm going to hit this button and we'll be right back. We are back. If you saw that commercial, if you're watching, I have to say I'm very excited because next Friday night, we are doing a Star Wars edition of the Match Game here on the streaming Star Wars network. Kerwin's laughing. I know he heard the music. He didn't get a chance to see the video, I don't think.
I actually saw it this time.
Nice.
Okay, you did see it this time.
I must be old if I remember that scene in this game show.
Well, what was great is a little peek behind the curtain. Before the show started, we were testing to see if he could see the video, and so we ran it. And he goes, "No, I heard the Match Game music. Like there was no question what the music was." Right. So yeah, next Friday night we have 6 contestants. We're going to do basically like 3 versions of the show. We've got our panel that you saw right there, our celebrity panel: me, Chris, Reagan, Raven, Heather Antos, and the indefatigable Scotty J. Rowe. We are going to be the celebrity panel. Pete is going to be in the Gene Rayburn hosting position. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have fun. We're going to laugh. We're going to throw it back to some good old-fashioned 70s game show Star Wars silliness. So I hope everybody will make plans to tune in and join us for that. It's going to be a ton of fun.
I hope he's going to have that long, skinny microphone with the
I hope he does too. If nothing else, he's going to have to make a fake one that he can hold on to.
Wow.
So that's going to be awesome. Gentlemen, it's been a pretty busy week in Star Wars. There's been a lot of stuff going on. There's been some news tidbits here and there. I think the first place to jump off, honestly, is we got another new episode of Bad Batch this week. I'm going to throw it to Kerwin first as our guest host, co-host. You're not a guest, you're a guest co-host. What were your thoughts on this week's episode? What did you and Keith talk about? You know, what hit for you on this episode?
Yeah, so this past episode was called The Crossing. So this is taking place immediately after the last episode where Omega and Echo said their goodbyes. Yes. And Omega did not take it very well that she was losing another member of her family, but it's kind of it impacts them in this episode because I think they're all trying to deal with the loss of Echo in their own way. And, you know, what's happening is it's really taking them off their game because there's some things that are happening to them that you don't expect that to happen to the Batch. You know, they got their, you know, if we're doing spoilers, you know, the ship was stolen and, you know, they almost ran over by a stampede of animals, you know, so I think they lost their focus for a little bit. And Omega and Tech really had a very heart-to-heart conversation, which was wonderful. You know, Omega just needed someone to know and understand what she was going through, even though maybe Echo, you know, like he said, that he was processing things different than she was. But that was okay. But what Omega needed from Tech is to understand how she's feeling. So I thought it was a very emotional episode, and it was very well done. You know, these Bad Batch episodes, sometimes you have to watch it more than once to really get behind the meaning of you know, characters and what they're saying and what they're trying to say, rather than the big picture, like, oh, well, they were just on another mission. You know, it's more than that. You know, it's about you know, what's going on in their head and what's in their heart.
Right. Absolutely. Chris, what about you?
You know, once again, this is a case of there are no such thing as fillers when it comes to, I would say, damn near anything that Filoni, you know, works on, and you know, their story structure. Everything has its place, and you know, like some people are like, oh, it was another slow episode and not much happened. I'm like, but in the grand scheme of things, this is a very important episode. And I thought it was a very personal story, and I'm so glad that we got. I know we got Tech in the Fast and the Furious episode, you know, a couple weeks back, but And I like that because I like that he's getting a little more shine this season. But
Right.
this one, you really got to learn more about him and see see that maybe he may not emote like they do, but his feelings it's all still there. It's just in a different way that he conveys those feelings. And I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was fantastically done. And
Absolutely.
I don't think that Wrecker couldn't have known.
No, of course not.
Coming to steal that ship.
Well, and I have a theory about that. I have a theory, and you see it kind of planted in a couple of different places. I wonder if somewhere along the line, this is pointing us towards the dissolution of the batch or a temporary separating, because there were several moments with Wrecker being put upon, starting to kind of feel the burden. Oh, you want me to carry the heavy thing? Oh, it's my fault. I lost the, like, there's little wedges being driven here. There's little, little seeds of doubt being planted between that with Echo now being gone. I can see them kind of starting to head in a direction of, what does it come down to? What does it spread out to? They've all gone different directions, or what does the ultimate end look like? It hits, but then also, like Kerwin talked about, those as a parent, those parental moments with Omega talking to Tech, it really was one of those, like, oh, she's a kid, and like she's still processing the loss of Echo. She's still processing the loss of a family. And, it says something on a couple different levels. He talks about, well, we're soldiers. That's what we do. We just keep moving. But it also speaks to, even in a modern culture sense of, we have children, we have adults, we have people of all ages and ranges who process life differently. And whether you, look at it from the sense of like an autism spectrum, or whether you look at it from the sense of cognitive function, whatever it is, this is addressing those kinds of things too, because he said, I don't process it the same way you do. I don't receive it, and there's power in that in storytelling, because people, again, as we've talked about a bunch of times, people get to see themselves in these shows.
Yeah.
It may have seemed to somebody like a filler episode, but there was something in there for someone specific. It may not have been me. It may not have been one of you, but it spoke to somebody else in a very specific way. And I think that continues to be the power, even in, animation or a movie or a TV show. Like, we get the depth in it, which I'm continually blown away by.
Nick, I totally agree with you. That actually did touch me when I saw the episode for the first time. Like I said, I watched it a couple of times. That part when Tech said, I process things differently. I have a child who has autism, and that's something that we hear often, is that children who are on the spectrum process things differently. But when he said that, I really felt, okay, there's a neurodiversity that's going on here, where we all process things differently. But what Echo is what Tech is saying is that, yes, I may not see things the way you see it, or I may not feel it the way you feel it, but I am processing in my own way. So that really touched me when he mentioned that. I immediately thought about Maceo and kids on the spectrum who, people may overlook as, well, they don't understand, they don't know what's going on. But no, you can't say that. They're just processing things differently. You don't know what's in their head. You don't know what's in their heart.
Correct. And even just being a kid, like, even if it's, not a processing order, if it's not a cognitive thing, she's a kid. Like, she's what, 10 or 11? Is that, I don't remember how old she's supposed to be. It's somewhere in there. And it's just lost as a kid. Like, wait, what do you mean it's different? What do you mean he's not coming back? What do you mean this family is separating or breaking up? Like, there's power in being reminded. And like the episode at the end of last season, when she got her little bunk on the ship, and, I think Wrecker was the one that was like, yeah, this is your space. And they made the little, they gave her the stuffed animal. And like, those parental moments remind us that in the grander story, like, there are kids involved in these things. We see it in, glimpses throughout other shows. We're going to get, I think, a lot of that with Skeleton Crew, which is going to be fun. But it is a reminder of the very human emotions, not only behind the writers of these stories, but what it conveys to the viewers of it. I have to ask too, you talked about the Stampede. Did anybody else get Lion King vibes out of that Stampede when they came running through there? Because it felt all kinds of Lion King, just for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, good. It's not just me.
I love that. I love that everything that could go wrong kind of did go wrong as they were trying to get back to the ship, or throwing audibles so they could survive and find a way off planet and all that stuff. And I like how they were able to, the Ipsium, I think that's what it's called. The Ipsium kind of landed them in that spot that they're in, and the Ipsium got them out. And I thought that was awesome, the way they were able to use that to their advantage.
Absolutely. And I love this that Brian just put in the chat. She's older than them chronologically, but biologically has been around longer, but not the accelerated mental emotional development. And that's key. That's something to remember when we look at, who these characters are. They had the accelerated growth and all that kind of stuff, and she didn't. And so it's just an entirely different deal. Yeah. It was a lot of fun. It was a good episode. I do think that it continues to plant seeds for, what's coming next. Again, I'm firmly in the no filler camp. I don't think that they do that in Star Wars. There's a reason for it. And if it's planting the little seeds of division, if Wrecker gets upset next week because they're continuing to ask him to carry the heavy crap, and he goes, you know what, maybe you don't need me anymore. Or maybe those are those little things that build towards a crescendo of how good storytelling is done. So it's done for a reason.
And I'm glad that and I hope something like this happens to a degree, because these guys they're all brothers and they're always around one another. There's going to become a point when you're going to get sick of somebody in your crew. It's going to it's got to happen. It wouldn't be realistic, and not that Star Wars needs to be realistic, but I like that that's happening, and it's not going to break them up, so to speak, but it'll put them at odds for a bit, and I kind of like seeing that kind of dynamic happening.
Well, let's do this. We've got a couple of callers hanging out in the background. Let's go ahead and grab one and see if they have any thoughts about this week's episode of Bad Batch. So let's run a video and we'll get a caller in here.
Oh, thank the Force! Come here, you little womp rat!
He's back again.
We went to a comic book store, and he bought
he's keeping his
comic book.
That's right. He's keeping his Cal Ripken streak alive multiple weeks in a row. Eric is in the house. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good.
Awesome. What's on your mind this week?
Well, I've been thinking about all the things that I didn't mention. My excitement about Mandalorian, because we talked so much about, is it perfect Star Wars? And I'm
right.
Like, sometimes I just want to geek out about something rather than like get in the trenches of like what is good and what isn't sometimes.
Fair.
Totally fair. And like I'm excited to get back to some of the themes has been tackling, and it is something that is coming out very soon. With questioning of what it means to be Mandalorian. Who's going to lead the Mandalorians? Because for each of the Mandalorians that we follow, they all have their own philosophy. I would say in many ways, the first extreme is the armorer, but the most whatever about it is probably Boba Fett.
Right.
And I'm excited to see possibly for Din Djarin to be, less droid phobic. We see him in that bar. Right. He seems to be chill with them. Also, shout out to B1 Battle Droids. We love to see them. They're still around.
That's right.
I'm real interested in what they're going to do with Christopher Lloyd, since he's going to be in the show. I'm real excited. He's going to play. I have no idea, and that makes me more excited.
Sure.
That we have no idea.
I'm both. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people are like, oh, he's going to play, Star Wars equivalent of Doc Brown. You don't know that. He could be playing a robot. He could play like the new version of C-3PO. You never know. Okay, you never know what some of these actors go pull out.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, that's where we were with Nick Nolte, right? With Quill. We're like, who's Nick Nolte going to be? And it was Nolte, right? Am I getting that right?
Nolte.
Yeah.
Honestly, I had a hot second where I thought Busey.
Busey.
No, it wasn't Busey. It was Nolte. Exactly. Chris knows. Chris was feeling me. Yep. Yeah. So with Nick Nolte, and of course it was him doing the voice for Quill and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, we're right. We don't have any idea what he's going to be, but I am also hotly anticipating how does Christopher Lloyd factor into this.
Yeah. And I'm starting to think like if there's there probably is going to be a fourth season. I feel like Grief Karga's robe is just going to be like engulfed his entire body. It's going to be like a little. This is going to be like a
every season.
Hey, as long as he's there, he can wear whatever.
Hey,
he wants.
Doesn't matter. Can wear whatever he wants.
In Zelen, we're getting in Zelen's Baba Frick's race.
Yep.
I'm excited like how like even for chapters of like the mythos in the franchise that are not the best well received, like they're still like letting you know that they're still family. Like we're not going to act like it didn't happen. We're still going to accept it, and we're going to focus on things that you probably will still enjoy. Because like if you don't like Baba Frick, then I'm just like your soul is stoned.
That's right. What are we even doing here? Well, those are excellent thoughts. I'm excited. We, we've kind of seen the hype machine has picked up this week with TV spots dropping. We get the little, mini clip that showed up with Mando in Grief's office and Grogu in the chair. But even in those little, like the Twitter ads that are showing up, and like there's the one that's the 3 different blocks, and like it starts at his hole and then it cuts to 3 different things. I had to watch it 3 separate times just to watch the top row the whole time, then watch the middle row the whole time, then watch, because I'm looking for those tiny little changes, those tiny things that we haven't seen yet. And there's a shot in there of Grief, in his robes and glory, pulling his blaster on somebody and like getting to, there's so many little tidbits, but we couldn't be more excited. We're ready for it to be back.
Yeah. And I'm happy you shouted out the black advertiser that been working with the franchise. I think that's a great spotlight because so often we're focusing on people in front of the screen or like the number 3, like 1, 2, 3 of the people behind the screen, like director, producer.
Right.
We don't think about like how everyone is really a part of like what made it big and like why it still has staying power. Like everyone, just like all the various Glup Shidos, like they all have their purpose and they all help tell the story in real life and in fiction.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's important. And I'll throw the link on Twitter after we get done with the show tonight. I encourage everybody to check out that article. It's a good little deep dive on just the history of his career and what he did, and not just with Star Wars, but like it goes into the little moves that were made, the little strategic things he did, like, going and showing, this one movie to like elementary kids weeks before it came out, and it built hype because it drove families out, and, the different things that he is truly the one that was responsible for the marketing strategy that got this movie out there that made it the juggernaut that it was. So it's an important story to tell. And I'm, glad to have, just brought a little bit of attention to it. And I hope other folks get to check it out. So Eric, it's always fabulous to see you. We're going to send you on your way. We've got some other callers hanging out. We've got some other topics we want to get to. So before I get you out of here, this is your parting thought. What is the number one thing that you want to see in Mandalorian season 3?
Number one thing I want to see in Mandalorian season 3.
Put him on the spot.
I just want, the story that I can enjoy. Like as long as they do that, like I'm on board. I don't have like a checklist of things that have to be in there. I would hope
with you.
the things in the trailer were in there. I would hope.
We got to pay those off somehow.
Yeah. They could really just screw with us and just like, oh, look, April Fools, we're just gonna put up the holiday special.
They could hit you with that Rogue One trailer and go, wait, where did all those clips go?
Yeah.
But
Awesome.
I'm glad to be here. And hi, Kerwin. I didn't hear you say anything to me, but I thought you were the host.
No, I'm actually just listening to you. Now, I was thinking about, the previews and the trailers that we've seen so far for The Mandalorian Season 3. Two things that we don't see, unless I missed it. One, the Darksaber, and two, Moff Gideon. So I'm wondering, are they both with him? Even as you see Din walking around, he's not carrying a Darksaber. So I was just wondering, curious where that would be. But
very interesting.
Just wondering
if find out soon.
They're all in the same place.
Yeah.
Awesome.
They're going to answer it.
Yeah.
So they're just going to leave that open because some people, like, they brought the Darksaber into live action and had everyone go like, "What's this?" And then you have like all the nerds come out of the woodwork and saying, "Oh, is this from this TV show? You didn't watch the cartoon back in 2000, did you?"
Yep. See, they can't have that. So awesome, Eric. Good to see you as always. We will see you probably not next week because we're not taking calls during match game next week, but we'll be back at it the week after, and it'll be Mando time. So we'll be talking about that for sure. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you soon.
You too.
Take care.
Always good to see Eric. Like I said, he's got that Cal Ripken Jr. streak going where he's not going to miss a game. He's going to show up every time. I do have to bring up something because he mentioned Mando, and this was on my list of things for us to talk about. That publicity hype train has picked up this week. We've gotten those little clips. We've gotten, we lost Kerwin. We'll get him back here in a second. That as that Mando hype train is building, I know you mentioned to me beforehand, Chris, you have thoughts about Grogu spinning around in the chair.
Yeah. Not so much Grogu spinning in the chair, Grogu being there, period.
Okay.
And this is not Grogu hate or anything like that at all. It's just I thought that send-off that they had at the end of season 2 was so powerful and so emotional. And then I was so hyped to see his adventures with Luke and R2, before he goes off and becomes Grogu the Destroyer later on in the sequel trilogy. But so and then to bring him back so quickly, I thought, like, I mean, I get it. Grogu is very profitable.
Sure.
But I would have loved for this to be like, all right, he had this saga with Grogu to sort of get him get Din sort of out of his shell, so to speak. And now he's ready for the next chapter of his life, and that's becoming this probably he's going to be Mandalore. Like, I think he's going to be the leader of the Mandalorians at some point going forward. So I was hoping for, like, like when they announced it, when Favreau talked about Mandalorian, I think I said this last week. When Favreau talked about Mandalorian and Celebration Chicago, he talked about how it was going to be a very Game of Thronesy feel, whereas these first 2 seasons was very much Lone Wolf and Cub, and now, with these different houses and and for the Mandalorian people and bringing that Excalibur, so to speak, to bring his people together and back to prominence. I was really looking forward to that, like his solitary journey. But they haven't let me down so far on anything, so I'm not worried in that aspect. I just was hoping for like Din's solitary story.
So here's where I think maybe that comes in, and I thought about this because I also at one point tried to screen cap some of those Twitter videos so I could pause and look at details and all that kind of nonsense that we nerds like to do. And there's the scene where Peli is holding Grogu and looking up like Den is leaving. And so what if the part that we get in that trailer in Grief's office is super early on, first episode, here for a visit, checking in, what's going on, tries to sell him the land out by the lava fields. And then the mission happens, the Mandalore stuff starts dropping, and he says, I can't take this kid with me to Mandalore. Now, of course, we have the scene where Bo's talking to Grogu. You didn't think your dad was the only Mandalorian, whatever. But maybe an early part of it is he goes off for a good bit of that on that solitary journey and on that sorting it out and leaves Grogu behind. We got a tease of that in the second season when they go on the, what's the planet when Space Bill Burr comes back, when they're the tank drivers. Morak, when they go on that episode, and that was the first episode we had gotten in 2 seasons with no Grogu. And yeah, I felt like that was an opportunity for them to test what is this show like without that element, and what could they do with it. So there's no telling where it's going to go. Kerwin, any other thoughts from you as far as Mando season 3 coming up?
Yeah, I have a theory, and it's probably not something that most people would agree with, but I do agree that Din is going to go on his journey, right? He's going to go to Mandalore as the armor has told him, to atone. And Grogu is also going to go on his journey. And I believe that Grogu is going to return to Luke,
Okay.
I think, Luke might have made a hasty decision to allow this child, Grogu is still a child, to make the decision whether to, train as a Jedi or to go back and be with his dad. And, right now, Luke is the most powerful Jedi, right now there is at this time period.
Yeah.
So Luke has the opportunity to change his mind and say, well, how about, you train with me because you have a power that has to be, it has to be refined, you have the Force, but you have to know how to control it, what to do with it, how to use it. So if he could maybe have some type of arrangement made with Din to, to say, okay, well, Yoda, Grogu will stay with me to train. And then when he's not training with Luke, Grogu would be with his dad. So I'm thinking that could possibly happen.
Okay. Absolutely. I like that.
I like that. And Nick, like we talked about, this leads up to what I've been saying. Like he goes back with Luke, and then what we think happens with Ben Solo at the Academy, it was really Grogu that did it. And then he goes into hiding for a little while, and he comes back after the Rise of Skywalker as Grogu the Destroyer. Why doesn't anyone believe me?
Oh boy, yeah.
He's going to plunge Yoda's lightsaber deep in somebody's heart.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, let's do this. We have another caller waiting on the line. Let's get them in here and see what their thoughts are about Mando in season 3, and certainly Grogu the Destroyer. So let's do that.
And who might you be?
I had to do it. The one and only Chris's nemesis, Mr. Brian Fennessy.
I don't know if I would go that far.
Weird.
What's up, dude? How are you?
What's up, guys? First, Grogu the Destroyer, he already put his lightsaber through my heart.
Yep. Just crushing feelings.
Yeah. No, what's up, boys? Kerwin, how are you?
Hey, Brian, how are you?
How you doing, brother?
Great. I'm very happy to be here with you today.
Always good to see you. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, in my case, I was going to talk Bad Batch.
Okay.
It hit very close. It was very close to home this week. Like Kerwin, I have my daughter is on the spectrum, so hearing Tech talk the way he does to Omega and how he thinks and processes differently was very, it kind of got a little emotional. I would almost say that you don't really necessarily expect out of the Saturday morning cartoon. But no, it's made me very happy. I was very happy that we didn't see Hunter dangling over the cliff and drop into the stampede of gazelles.
That's right.
Yeah.
A la Mufasa.
He didn't get Jeremy Irons like "Long live the
Oh my God. If all of a sudden he's climbing up the cliff and Crosshair's at the top, he's like, "Let me help you, brother." I'm like, "Oh God, no."
That's it. We're done.
Yeah.
Wow, that would have taken a turn.
Yeah. I mean, Wrecker and Tech, they're arguing like brothers do, like every sibling does. It's just funny seeing without Echo there to watch them going tit for tat against each other, because you have Hunter in the dad role and the rest of them are the kids. So it's funny kind of seeing the kids bickering against each other when they don't have the third one to kind of bully up against, or how they how all of our kids and when we were kids all kind of regroup around each other to go against all of our other brothers.
The balance
and sisters.
is off.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was an excellent episode. It's meant a lot to a lot of people on Twitter and throughout the fandom. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, Brian, so when I was first introduced to the Bad Batch, when we saw them in the Clone Wars episode, I remember, every Clone Wars episode starts with a quote, where this one was, embrace others for their differences, for that is what makes you whole. And something about that quote really caught my attention. And when I actually got to see who the Bad Batch was and what their story is, like, oh, okay, well, this sounds to me, this is Star Wars' way of introducing neurodiversity, because they describe the Bad Batch as defective clones, meaning they're not like all the others, right? And to me, in my world, it feels like, okay, well, when you are, talking or you live with someone who is on the spectrum, people might think that they're the defective ones because they don't look like other people, or they don't think like other people, or they don't talk like other people. So that's what really brought my attention to the Bad Batch, and I will always be a fan of this series. And exactly like you said, when Tech said to Omega, I process things differently. How many times as a parent of a child on the spectrum have you heard that your child would process things differently? So that really grabbed my attention. It was emotional. So I truly get where you're coming from.
And just knowing how you have to interact with that child as opposed to your neurotypical children, you have to do everything slightly differently, just because although they may they don't process everything the same exact way.
Yeah,
it's not a wrong way, but it's one of the biggest hurdles I've had as a parent.
Sure,
is learning, especially when they're younger, to how you have to change. Your tactics isn't the correct way to phrase it, but how you just trying to be a parent. It's going to be a very different style than you would with your neurotypical.
Yeah, exactly. It takes a lot of patience. It's you have to communicate with your child differently. Sometimes they don't know how to communicate, what they're trying to say. They may not know how to say it that well. So it's you're learning something every day. It's like it's a puzzle, like putting pieces to a puzzle together. Okay, well, what what it is you're looking for? Why are you unhappy? What's making you upset? What can I do? I truly got that from this episode, that Omega just wanted her brother Tech to understand, what she's going through is okay. The way she's handling, her emotions is fine. Just the way Tech is handling his is okay, but at least accept how she's handling it, and accept that she's handling differently then he's going to handle it, and then just respect each other. When, he, went off and, right before, she ran off and he says to her, "What is your problem?" That wasn't, that's not what you wanted to, to say to, someone like Omega, you know what I mean? Because,
Sure.
she just needs to understand that what she's going through, and that's with any child.
Well, we all know the worst thing to tell your child when they're upset is to calm down, because that always works well.
Yeah, it always turns out, doesn't it?
Same as when you say that to your wife, it always works
I was
well.
going to say, there's another version of that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, any final thoughts before we get you out of here? We've got another caller I want to jump to before we jump to a break.
Just that
what else is on
we
your
do
mind?
know that there is more to Tech than just his male pattern baldness.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, we're learning a lot more about
Absolutely.
Tech this season, so it's
Yeah.
very interesting, so it's cool.
good
It's
stuff.
about time, he didn't get his shine last season, so
Absolutely.
I think it's good that they're showing a balance. Everyone's well-rounded. You're getting to learn more about each of the members, so it's you're getting that emotional connection with all of them now. Hunter is my favorite character, but Tech he's gaining, he's starting to get my attention, so
Absolutely. And speaking of Hunter, I love the way they've changed his color scheme with the orange and the teal and the white, like the way his helmet and armor is painted now. I'm living for that. That's a good look. So big fan of that. Brian, always good to see you, my friend. Thanks for popping in. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and always being a part of the show. So good to see you, and we will see you again soon.
Thank you, boys. Have a great weekend.
Take care.
Awesome.
All
See ya.
Out.
Excellent. Always love hearing from Brian. We have another caller on deck, and they have been patiently waiting. It is their turn. Not going to delay. I'm going to go ahead and get him in here.
Hello.
He's back again. He's chasing Eric only by one show, but he's back again. It's going to happen somewhere. Somebody's going to trip. Angry Tasty Cakes in the house.
Listen, I gave up Call of Duty with the boys for this. Okay.
Well, your sacrifice does not go
Eric.
unnoticed.
Okay.
That's right. He's watching you, bro. What's up?
Yeah. So a couple housekeeping things on my end. I have to make a correction. Last week I said the Morang Tong. That is incorrect. I had the Elder Scrolls on my mind. It's just the Tong. Okay. Before someone came in the chat, went actually. Okay.
Gave you a little glasses push. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Chris, happy belated birthday.
Oh, thanks, bro.
I have a gift for you, and it's to never allow us to let this picture be lived down.
Yeah.
And then I'm also I commissioned a puppet as well in your honor.
Oh no!
Whoa!
Don't let those other guys see it. They will get upset and try to take it.
No. There's no chance of copyright on this one. I promise.
Oh, awesome.
So, and then I'm so happy to see Kerwin. I was so excited when I saw that you were going to be on this week. First time I ever got into podcasting, like in general, was when you did that interview with the Andor cast.
Wow.
And, I was so excited to kind of just see the excitement on your son's face during that whole process. And it reminded me like why we love Star Wars so much, like to see the excitement in general. Right. So I was so excited to see you this week. So happy day. I'm so pumped.
You.
Yes. And then, so Bad Batch was nuts.
Yep. What you got?
And I think it's just kind of a cool inroad into how like clone minds really work, because like throughout the Clone Wars we got to see like how their personalities kind of developed, right? But they were always still cookie cutter to a certain extent. Like Cody was, he was the field marshal. Obviously he's going to be more professional. Captain Rex was more personal, but he wasn't as professional, but he was still a soldier, and stuff like that. So to kind of see Tech get his moment, I was like, I like this. I like seeing how even though they're considered genetically defunct by Kaminoan standards.
Yeah.
Imperfection is still perfection, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think Filoni had, and Favreau in this case, I think it was Filoni that pioneered this episode. Was he the one that spearheaded it? I don't remember. But for them to kind of tackle neurodiversity like this,
Mm-hmm.
I think but kind of make it more, I don't want to say palatable because that's not the right word, but more easily digestible for someone who doesn't really know what that definition is. I feel like went a long way to kind of, getting us to understand a little bit more about them. I also really liked how Wrecker is now not really just the dumb brute, like the comic relief. Like he's standing up to what is considered to be the smart one of the group. And he's really letting them have it. He's like, no, you're the one that messed up this time. It wasn't me. Like, you messed up. Go fix it. And for like Wrecker to say something like that, I was like, oh, damn, dude.
Yeah.
All right. Like, I like this side of you. Like, it's time to kind of like put your foot down on some things. Like, yeah, you're good at fighting, but now you're like, no, you can kind of know where the line is drawn.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of cool. I will admit, though, that kind of got me a little bit when she went and kind of turned off that light in the cave. And then she saw like the purple shine through. I admit I had a moment where I was like, ooh, did she just find a Kyber?
Yep. Same.
Like, is this like where they're kind of leading in like a force sensitive clone? Because like the Reborn are not part of this canon anymore, right? So like a force sensitive clone at this point, I was like, ooh, nope, just more explosive rock. And I was kind of upset about it. But at the same time, I was like, what did I say last week? Getting expectations up is just disastrous and terrible. So yeah. All in all, a good week.
It was a great week, and I agree with you. I had that moment. I had the Kyber moment, but I've also continued my version of the force sensitive clone is that I think that I keep thinking that's the hunter thing. Like, yes, he's attuned hunting senses and whatever, but like when that storm starts to crop up and he has that pause, those little moments. There was the one last week in one of those episodes, that same thing. Like, there's that part of me that's like, yeah, he has attuned senses, or is it the force? Like, that's where I keep wanting that one to show up. It could go either way, but that's the one that I've been holding on to.
Yeah, because like that was one thing that got me too, was like the ship is parked on the opposite outcrop, right? There's like a giant stone wall in between the two. But then all of a sudden he just like goes and then like hauls towards it. I'm like, how the hell would you have known that? Mm-hmm. Even if you had like some crazy super duper senses, like how would you have known at that exact moment, at that exact point, that someone is in your ship taking that thing? How? Yep. It was kind of a cool little thing, and I feel like they're doing it on purpose.
Oh, sure.
There's nothing that's left to chance.
Not in this world.
No,
not usually.
Nope.
Yeah, it's so good, and it continues to be so good in giving us those little tidbits and leading us down a path. And we've said this before. We said it early in this season in one of the first couple episodes on the Friday night show. You don't do a puzzle and put like a third of it together and then go, this doesn't make any sense. What are we doing here? You put the whole damn puzzle together, then you look at it and go, oh, this is what it is. Mm-hmm. And it's no different with shows like this. We can't look at it and go, it's good or bad, or this doesn't make sense until we get all of it. Like, we have to get all the pieces in place. And then you can look back at it critically and go, well, they could have done this, or I wish they had taken a different route. But until we're there, like, next week, everybody could have lightsabers. We just don't know. Like, it doesn't, there's no way to. So when people get into gripe mode and, like you're saying, expectations, let's just enjoy it. Let's, pop some popcorn, eat it at 6 a.m. whenever you watch the show when it drops. And let's just have fun with it. Because again, Star Wars is fun. Or as somebody famously said, it's fake and in space. What are we getting mad about?
Right. Like, what's your thought process there? Like, there's sound in space. Like, but yeah, I mean, the gripe was already there. Unfortunately, like, people were like, "Oh, well, I'm not going to watch Mando because how the hell did he get Grogu back?" And I'm not going to watch this show to figure that one out. And it's like, all Star Wars is good Star Wars. Get out of here. It's.
I'm pretty sure
the thing that keeps you, if that's the thing that keeps you from watching it, I don't know what to tell you.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like, I just don't understand, you know, and I'm here for a good time. I don't like all of it, sure, but I'm not going to, you know, disparage a group of people because they might like it. Like, I was watching Andor at work. My coworker comes in today and he's like, "Oh, that show sucks." And I'm like, you know, like, no, you're entitled to your opinion. Just know that you're wrong. And I sat there and enjoyed myself, you know, like it was just like, just sit back, relax, enjoy the ride, you know.
Yeah.
We'll know more when season 3 comes out. I just want more Mandalorian language. That's all I want.
Like, that's right. Give us the
more spoken Mandalorian language. Yeah, that's all I want.
Awesome. Well, it's always good to see you, my friend. We're going to send you on your way. Thanks for popping in. We'll keep that streak alive, and somewhere along the way, we'll trip Eric up.
Oh, I'm planning on it. That's where the puppet comes in.
That's right. That's the puppet. There you go. Have a great weekend. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, you too. I'll be here.
All right, see ya. Well, gentlemen, we are still rolling. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back. I want to throw another topic at you just for a few minutes, and we've got another caller hanging out that's waiting on the line. And I'm excited to bring them in because I think they'll have some stuff to add to that conversation as well. So as I vamp here for just a quick second and switch part of my computer screen, we're going to run to a quick break, and we'll be right back. That's right. Got a little groove. I saw Kerwin dancing.
Oh, man.
It works every time. 60% of the time, it works every time, gentlemen.
I was moving. I said, well, can he see me? I don't know.
Yep. It's okay. And we even ran a promo that said Kerwin will be here next week. And guess what? Kerwin's here this week. So sometimes we get it most of the way right. I'll take the heat for that one. No big deal. We are back. It has been an amazing show so far. We're going to go just a little bit longer if you guys are both good, because I did want to throw another topic out there, something that has been on my mind. And I mentioned at the top of the show in my toast, I mentioned Ashley Boone Jr. It is Black History Month, and I think that's an important story to be told. I'm excited for folks to check out that article that I want to tweet out after the show's over with. I should have done it before. I just forgot. I'm excited for folks to check that out, to hear his story and see what he did. But what I wanted to take the opportunity to do with the two of you guys hanging out on the show tonight is just throw it to you to say, as Black men who grew up in this country, grew up with Star Wars, you saw it when it first came out. It's been something that's been with you your entire life. Yeah. Talk about what that meant to you. Of course, in the first Star Wars, we didn't have any Black characters. You know, we had Darth Vader, which, you know, kind of skirted some lines until we get to Empire and find out he's my father. I know Chris has some thoughts about that, but I just want to pass the ball to you guys to say, talk about, you know, what it means to be African-American and grow up with Star Wars and what it meant to you, how it grabbed you, you know, anything that, you know, kind of floats your boat along the way.
Kerwin, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'll start. When I first heard about Star Wars, I was trying to go back and remember the first time I heard what Star Wars is, and I really couldn't quite remember. I know, you know, I saw it on TV, you know, the commercials about this movie. It looked great. I've never seen anything like it before. I didn't know what it was. Like maybe it was something like a Star Trek, maybe perhaps. That's the only thing I could compare it to at the time. I didn't get a chance to see it when it first came out in '77. I couldn't find anyone to take me. 3 years later, I did go see The Empire Strikes Back. My sister-in-law took me. But as far as being a Star Wars fan and being a Black Star Wars fan, I only know of two other friends of mine, two buddies of mine who are actually into Star Wars as much as I was. But outside of those two guys, I don't know any other. So it was very interesting. And I didn't know if it was because, maybe there weren't a lot of Black fans out there who like Star Wars, or I just didn't know Star Wars fans at all, because throughout my high school and college and, working, I have not talked Star Wars to anybody. It was like a very interesting, lonely time, being a Star Wars fan. And it may not, I don't think it has anything to do with race. It's just, I just didn't know anyone who liked Star Wars as much as I did.
Sure.
So, I kept it to myself. I loved it, of course, the original trilogy. I watched them over and over and over, and, whatever medium there was at the time, VHS or CD, Blu-ray, I had them and I would watch them, and I just kept it to myself because I really didn't know anyone who talked about it until Keith came along, who I can talk regularly and every single day. If sometimes it gets to that point, and I love it. But I do know now, as I've gotten older, I start to realize that yes, there is a small number of African Americans who follow Star Wars, and I am doing my best to try to find them. I know there's more out there. When I take a look at photos from Star Wars Celebration, and I look at the past years of Celebration, I don't see much of people that look like me. And I don't know what that is. Maybe it's representation. It could be who we see on the screen. I know we had Billy D. Williams, and that was fantastic.
Yeah.
But he was just one character. He wasn't a major character. But in the prequel trilogy, we had Samuel L. Jackson. Again, not a major character. But then when we got to the sequel trilogy, and we heard about this character who was a stormtrooper who was defecting. And then when I saw the trailer, the second trailer for The Force Awakens, and that's the one where you hear Andy Serkis as Snoke's voice, there's been an awakening. Have you felt it?
Yep.
So on the first face you see is a Black man. And I jumped out of my seat and I said, okay, where can I buy my ticket? So I think representation is very important. We need to see more of us on the screen. I think that could be the reason why you don't see that in the fan base. But Chris, I'll let you take it. But maybe you feel the same way as I do. But it was very difficult to find someone who looked like me, who liked Star Wars. And it's a very lonely time, and I want to change that. I want to, Star Wars is inclusive. That's to me, that's what I see on the screen, with the different species and the languages, it should include everyone. But, I don't see it behind the camera. I don't see it in front of the camera. And I'm hoping that's something that, Star Wars can work on in the years to come.
Yeah. Kerwin lives where I grew up in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. And that is, it's a suburb outside of Philadelphia. I grew up there in maybe like between Plymouth Meeting, like in late 70s and early 80s, and then the rest of the 80s and 90s in King of Prussia. And these are white suburbs where like I was saying to Nick before the show started, I was one of maybe 3 to 5 Black kids in the entire school, like at most. So when it came to Star Wars and enjoying Star Wars with other friends, it was always like it was the friends that I made around my neighborhood. So it was all white friends, which is not bad. We had a great time, but like the only other Black person that I could enjoy Star Wars with was my older brother, and that still continues to this day. He and I will still talk about stuff, but Yes, so in that sense, I really think I had missed out on something. And yeah, like Kerwin, there weren't a lot of other or any other black kids who were Star Wars fans, and that that even goes to like different family members that I had. Like, I was the little Star Wars nerd, uh, in the family, and yeah, that part was tough. And I remember one of the funny things is yeah, it never bothered me, at least with the first Star Wars. And I don't think not until Billy D showed up, where I was like, yeah, why aren't there any more black people around? Why is it just Billy D? But
Mhm.
as a young kid, like my my dad, when it came to Darth Vader, he like my brother, my dad, and I, my mom, like he was the black guy. I mean, it was James Earl Jones doing the voice. I'm like, he's black. That's just it's like for y'all know Destro from the G.I. Joe cartoons, he's black. So I mean that's the way I look at it. But my dad always like, oh, that's a bad dude. Like that, my dad always said that about Darth Vader. Like, that's just a bad dude right there. But uh going forward, yeah, it's they had Lando, and that was cool. Um it didn't really jump up anymore except for like background characters in Return of the Jedi, which is fine because back then we weren't expecting a whole bunch of representation.
Sure.
Um so that was fine. But for me as a kid playing with my Star Wars figures and all that stuff, and I wanted to have more black characters, so I had, and there were 3 different Lando figures back then. The regular Bespin one, the Skiff Guard outfit, and General Calrissian. I used them all at the same time because that was just it. That was it. I had no, I just had to make them different characters, or I made them the Calrissian brothers, or just different characters, something like that. I made them, as a kid. When after the acquisition, you could tell that they were starting to want to, even in the prequels, they had Mace and they had maybe other background black characters again, which it sucks that there wasn't that many, but I'll take what I can get. That's the way it was, back for a while. I'll take what I can get. When a sequel trilogy came along after the acquisition, and then even with what they're doing with the comics and the books, and no, not so much Rebels, sort of Rebels, because I still think Kanan wasn't like supposed to be a white male character. I don't think Ezra was either. But just what they did, they tried their best, and they're still doing it. And they still got a ways to go. Is to even the playing field, so to speak, as far as representation goes between white, black, Asian, Middle Eastern, all that. So I think that's they're not there yet, but they're doing a better job. They really did drop the ball with Finn.
Yeah,
they dropped the
sure.
ball with Finn. I'm not going to get into it, but but they are getting better. Like one of the things I thought was fantastic was, and I know Pete hates The Rise of Skywalker, but if you looked at the people who were out there saving the galaxy, not so much the people fighting against Palpatine, but the people who were saving the galaxy, were heading that to save the galaxy. You've got Oscar Isaac. You've got Naomi Aki. You've got John Boyega out there. Those and I'm sorry, and Billy D. Williams out there saving the day. And it was
and Rose.
And Rose.
Kelly Marie's out there too. Yeah.
And it was amazing to see. And I was like that. And I'm like, I had to wait, 40 years for this, but it finally happened, and it was fantastic. That is a beautiful thing. Like there was a promotional shot that was done for Rise of Skywalker, and it was both John Boyega and Naomi Aki's character, and they were riding those horse thingamabobs. And seeing, and I'm like, this is a shot from Star Wars, and I had to this is Star Wars, what I'm seeing right now, and there are 2 black people on the screen at the same time. Now, for most people, that's not going to be like, so, but for having that in Star Wars, well, that meant like so much to me to see.
Yeah.
And not that I need anyone to throw a crumb to the community or anything like that, but that meant a lot to me to see that, because it was so weird to see. And I'm so glad that that's happening. And like I said, they are doing better. They're doing great with it as far as like in publications, the High Republic. They're doing a magnificent job with representation there.
True.
In the comics, Nick, they're doing a lot.
What are those again?
Yeah, the floppy books that have like the pictures on them.
Oh,
You can
gotcha.
read it. Yeah. But yeah, they're doing a lot with that. A lot of characters are starting to come forward in that people of color that are amazing characters and plentiful. I just need it to happen a lot more in live action.
Sure.
You know?
Absolutely. Well, I want to throw it to a caller. We've got a caller hanging out on the line, and I think he has some perspective that I think would go right along with this conversation. So if y'all will give me a quick second, I'm going to run a video and we're going to get him in here too.
Go for Papa Palpatine.
You have a collect call from
Darth Vader.
I gotta take this. Hold on.
I am excited to welcome to the show, and I don't always get to do this, so I have to take just an extra minute of privilege. I'm excited to welcome my friend Greg Iwinski to the show. Greg is a multiple Emmy Award winner, having written for Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. He is also a Star Wars podcaster and one of the hosts of the Yub Nub podcast. Good friend of mine. We got to hang out at Celebration. I text him randomly with annoying nonsense about Star Wars. And this afternoon, he chimed in on the Twitter feed that I put out there, and he was like, "How do I call in?" I was like, "I got you. We'll make it happen." Greg, how are you, sir? Are you there? Oh, Gregory. Hold on. It might be, let's see. It's one of these. I know what the issue is.
Operations disruption can mean only one thing: invasion.
I had to do it. All right. Greg shows up in the background. I don't see him on camera, but if he pops back up in a minute, or if he gives me the high sign, we'll bring him back in. I'd love to hear from him as also a Black man and as a writer on TV and some of that kind of stuff. I'd love to get his perspective on this. But in the meantime, I really appreciate, what you guys are saying. And yeah, Greg, we can't see you. You're not showing up on our end. Can you hear us? I mean, I guess you can hear us. You're watching us. Let's try it one more time. Greg, are you there? Nope, we don't have Greg.
It's going to reboot and come back.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I really appreciate this perspective, and I really appreciate getting to hear from you guys. And I've admired and respected the stuff that you guys have done with your shows. I love Keith. I mean, Kerwin. I say it every time. I call you Keith.
No, it's fine.
Kerwin. Watching not only your perspective, as a Black man, as a Star Wars fan, but as a father, and as being able to share that journey. It's just one of those things that I think is really powerful. And I love hearing from you guys, and I love hearing, the journey of it all to see. So this is my question. Let's start with Star Wars with 77. There was Darth Vader. We talked about that, Chris, obviously, as a fan, you're like, yeah, he's a Black man. It's cool.
He's Black.
But that was all that there was in that movie. But that story still grabbed you. Yeah, what was it about that story that grabbed you, despite not necessarily seeing yourself physically per se in that story? And hit that question, and then I think I see Greg in the background, so I think we're going to be good to go. But I'd love to hear your answer to that.
Like what you're saying, what as far as Star Wars has grabbed me? Well,
what grabbed you in that first movie, even if you didn't see somebody like yourself in it?
Being like 2-3 years old at the time, it was just all the visuals had grabbed me, and that's what got me. That's what got me into it. Seeing like Luke Skywalker was like super cool when I was a little kid and whatnot, and seeing his journey go through. But yeah, as a kid, there was nothing deep when I was like from like 2 to 5 mm-hmm. for me as far as Star Wars goes, outside of I love what I'm seeing. I love this world. Give me all the action figures. Like that's pretty much where I was for that for that little bit there. But as I got older, there was so much more to there was so much more that I would pick up on and learn about this world and the different themes and the relationships and everything that just made it so much more incredible for me, and it's been a part of my DNA for my entire life.
Absolutely, for sure. Kerwin, what about you? What grabbed you in that first movie?
Yeah. So my first movie was The Empire Strikes Back. It was just the storytelling. Well, no questions, the storytelling. I just thought it was compelling. It was relatable, and really, it was how George Lucas describes it. It's like a fairy tale. Good versus evil. So you know who the good guys are. You know who the villains are, and the plot line is okay. Well, the rebels have to try to overcome the villains. The second movie is the villains coming back and taking revenge on the rebels. So it was a pretty easy story to follow. But it was just the story. It was how it was told. It was so groundbreaking, like, okay, well, this is a fairy tale, but it's a fairy tale taking place in space with special effects that people have never seen before in a galaxy I've never heard of, planets I've never seen, species I've never heard of. The music is just incredible. So it was all of that together that made it just this wonderful experience, and it went beyond race. It went beyond religion or orientation, everything else. It was just focused on the storytelling, and having knowing who the good people versus the bad people were. And sometimes it's just in the Empire Strikes Back case, the good guys don't always win in the end, right? So actually it's a lesson to learn. Okay, even though as hard as you fight, sometimes you can still end up on the losing side, and it's okay because you can come back. You're down right now, but the idea is to come back and come back stronger. So I think that's what those movies taught me.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, speaking of comebacks, go ahead, Chris.
No, the other thing that I forgot to mention is there is a feeling. There's just this rush of feelings that come over me just looking at the logo for Star Wars, or just thinking back to any moment in it that gives me a type of joy that I unlike anything else. And that's what I've latched onto with Star Wars. That's one of the other things outside of the story and the characters, the special effects, the sound effects, as Jeff was saying. It's just this feeling, and it's I can't quantify it verbally, but it's just an amazing feeling that comes over me thinking about Star Wars, and just like what I thought of it as a kid, and like the little scenes I used to run in my head about it, or when I play with my figures and had my own little Star Wars stories and stuff like that. It's just that's it's a feeling unlike any other for me.
Absolutely, that's awesome. Well, speaking of comebacks, I think we've got Greg, so we're going to give this a roll one more time. I think he's here.
Goodness gracious me.
Anka, Pachuha Pinky.
There he is. We can see him.
He's
here.
Can you see and hear me?
We can.
Yep.
Oh, wonderful. Hi, it's me, Emmy Award-winning comedy writer Greg Iwinski / dad with a cold, Greg Iwinski.
Hey.
I have a cold and my 2-year-old has a cold, so we'll see how much.
Well, that's a classic key part of parenting, so you're doing it right, my friend.
It's going great.
It's good to see you. It's good to get a chance to have you call in tonight. As you've heard,
I used to, and I tell you what, I loved calling it. I was a guy, look, born in '84. If you want to anchor me in time, but I was a guy who called into sports radio as like an 11-year-old, 12-year-old, talking about the Phoenix Suns on local Phoenix radio, and they're like, "Wow, this kid wants to come on," and like, I'm a big this first time caller to this show, but I do love.
Heck yeah,
I do love
first time, long time. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you here, and I don't have a ton to add to this conversation, but I did want to bring it up and throw it to Chris and to Kerwin, and I'm glad to have you on to talk about it as well. As another, Black man who's a Star Wars fan, who has grown up with this, who has interacted with it in a lot of different ways, including being a podcast host yourself. We'd love to hear your thoughts about, your personal connections and those kinds of things.
First thing, let me plug that Yub Nub is coming back for The Mandalorian season 3.
Nice.
So
Ready
if you want to hear 3 TV writers, 2 of whom are black, talk about Star Wars like idiots, it is the
And
best
I've said, and
positive
let me
place.
cut you off. I've said it multiple times on this show and other times. If you're not listening to Yub Nub, you're missing out. I'm the number one fan. I'm here to cheerlead and pump it up. It is such a great show. I love listening to you guys, the perspective you have as TV writers, and I'm a sucker for behind the scenes and process and that kind of stuff. So it certainly speaks to me, but it's just a great show. So I'm excited for other folks to check it out.
We're coming back for Mando, and then we're going to do we're going to try to add some live elements, like some live
Sweet.
watch alongs and maybe a show in New York, because we're all New York based. So doing something here.
Awesome.
But yeah, we are coming back. In terms of Star Wars as a black person, I would say for me, I had the benefit of that. I first saw Star Wars as a movie of the week, a CBS movie of the week that my parents taped on VHS.
Okay.
And you'd cut off a little bit because you pause it when the commercials, pause the VCR recording, and then unpause too late, and you'd miss a little bit. But I watched that VHS a zillion times with the little CBS logo in the corner, and loved it. And I knew it from that. But then when it accelerated into a bigger thing was the books. And so the books were huge for me. And the benefit of the books is that I'm inventing how everyone looks. So it wasn't even that I was going through specifically and going, this guy's black, this guy's white. It was like, they don't have to be white. And that's really the thing of you hear people talk about it too, and it's like, well, we're talking about race in Star Wars. Race is inherent in Star Wars because if white is the default, then that is race. So if the average person in a giant galaxy of beings is white, then we've made a racial decision. And so for me, the books gave me freedom to move away from that. And then as I move forward in fandom, I think, and then, as someone who creates shows myself, I think that there is a real, there are these kind of waves of representation, right? Because you can take a regular character and you can go, well, we'll make them black. We'll make one of them black. Well, if the staff writing the show is white and the showrunner is white and the VP of the network is white and the people running standards of practices are white and everyone up to the top is white, then is that character really black or did we just paint them black?
Right. And
that's not just a Star Wars thing. That's across the board. I'm showing my son television all over the place where you have a diverse cast of characters, but it's the same 4 seasoned white guys writing them. And and I think that's what it takes is one of the steps of representation is white people not being furious black people are in Star Wars. We're moving that one a little bit where they're not like, oh my God, black people are talking, like 2 black people talking to each other. How is this possible? So and also, as I've said, those people don't matter. They're sad.
Sure.
They're busy storming the Capitol. They have other things to do. But the thing that moves on from representation from there is that we recognize ourselves, black people recognize ourselves in the characters. That's not possible unless black people are, as Kerwin said, behind the camera. Sure. If they are behind the camera, if they are in the writer's room, if they are part of that team, because I think this is something that's really hard because a lot of people are well-meaning and we're talking about what does it mean to be represented. But the example I use because I'll teach some writing workshops and whatever, the example I use is this, which is if I take a blank scenario, which is we are in a marketplace, it is crowded. Your main character is walking through the marketplace looking at everything. There is a commotion. Someone gets pushed over. A man runs past them. 10 steps behind them is a policeman running after them saying, stop that person. Now, if you freeze that scenario, who is the good guy? Who is the bad guy? Who deserves benefit of trust? What does it say about our belief in the system of policing or in the community we're in? All of that is so deep into who people are. And that's not just black and white people. That's immigrants, that's Mexican Americans, Native Americans, all sorts of people.
Sure.
It goes to that level. It's not having somebody with a cool afro and that's black and saying, we did it. We put black people in Star Wars. It's going, how do the things that are inherent to who we are and our experience, one of which say is being able to find joy in tragedy, an inherently Black American experience. How do those things portray themselves in a world this big? Because white things are out all the time. I mean, the hero's journey, as great as it's been for making a lot of movies, if you start getting into, feminist thought and Black thought and literary, criticism, the hero's journey lines up really well if you're like a white guy with a rich dad, because it's like you have all this power built into who you are, just genetically and inherently. You, Harry Potter, have all this power built into you, and if you just realized it and tried a little harder, the whole universe would come to heel and let you rule it, essentially. Luke gets to do that. Neo gets to do that in The Matrix. Harry Potter gets to do that. These guys who are kind of whiny, they don't really try that hard. They spend the whole time being like, I don't want to be superhero. And then magically at the end, they get it. That's not how Black people's lives work. We could be really good and the best at something and very excellent and spotless careers. And then the system goes, no, thank you. So that's why I think as we move forward in storytelling, not just with Star Wars, but with everything representative, I think with Marvel and DC and all these giant IPs and hopefully new IPs people make, the kind of generational representation I want to see in Star Wars and everything else is going, okay, where do I see my own struggle? Where do I see my own, where do I see someone coming up against a system designed to oppress them specifically and they still win? I mean, that's one of the reasons I love Saw Gerrera so much, is that to me, this is not meant to be a name drop. It's to contextualize the conversation. I was interviewing Tony Gilroy, and check out the On Writing podcast from the Writers Guild of America East. But I was interviewing Tony Gilroy, and I'm talking to him about that. To me, Saw Gerrera is John Brown. And that's what I love about him, is that to me, John Brown is maybe the best, greatest living American, personal hero, fellow Kansan, all these things. But that Saw Gerrera is showing you a type of struggle where he goes, there's no lines, man. We got to win this. And then you're seeing, with Skarsgård, you're like, oh, that's a different kind. Maybe that's Frederick Douglass, where it's like, well, I'm going to use the system. I'm going to use it, and then we're going to bring. And that show ended up being the brownest show, even though all the guys writing it were white, because they were open and listening to Diego and to other people in there. The example I use all the time is that in that first two episodes, when the security guards catch Diego, they ask him if he swam across to get there. And if you've ever lived in Arizona or California and heard derogatory terms for Mexicans and that they came across by swimming across the river into America, you went, I get that. That's not too earthbound. That's not too here and now. That tells me who the character is in a shorthand that I understand. And so, I was happy to see Finn. I do think that all conversations with Finn should also go over and Google Roy Wood Jr.'s bit on Black Brits and how often Hollywood uses British people to play American Black people. Yeah. His bit says it all better than I could. But I was excited for Finn. I was excited to see Lando again, to see young Lando, to see all these people. But the thing that always sits in the back of my mind is that, 9 movies, 9 male white writers. Like, okay, so this saga is one point of views. And even in that, there's differences, obviously. JJ and Ryan are different, whatever. But still, this is one slice. We're using the diversity of one slice. So, okay, so what happens when Rick gets his hands around Mandalorian more? What happens with Acolyte? What happens when, the movie that Lindelof is making that I don't know anything about other than Lindelof who made Watchmen, who was some of the blackest crap I've ever seen on television. Watchmen taught white people about Tulsa.
Correct.
White people were like, "Can you believe this happened?" And every Black person sitting with them was like, "You didn't know this happened?" Yeah. It was crazy. Yeah. And so he made that. So this is my thing, is he's co-writing it with this new young guy who's Black, and they're writing this new Star Wars movie. Cool. And the reason it's cool is that as I talk about these waves of representation, it is not that every single person has to be Black, has to be no more white men. all the people photoshopping red eyes onto Ray, we're onto you. We're erasing you from the industry. It's like, look, and also those guys, we're not erasing you from the industry. The fact that you have no talent is erasing you from the industry. If you could make movies, you would be. Instead, you make YouTube recaps. So make some movies. Put your script online. I'll put mine, you put yours. We'll see whose is better. But the thing is, Damon, he is the phrase I use, and I will believe it, but he F's with black people, right? Like my dad is white. I was adopted, big, tall Polish guy. Grew up in the Philippines, where he was the only white guy and knew how bad that felt. He F's with black people. A person that I can trust in any moment, that I'm like, oh, you get it. You're down. What used to be woke, what woke used to mean, down with the cause used to mean. These phrases that keep getting ripped away, but that idea of somebody who you can trust, that's the goal. It's not that all white people get erased. It's that white people move from going, racism is bad, to then a phase of going, ooh, racism is bad, even if it benefits me, to then going, I can actually spot and I'm going to fight racism systemically myself without a black person having to ask me to. Cool. When you get to that final step, that's dope. An example I use is like Brian Tucker. Writes for Saturday Night Live, wrote for Chappelle, wrote for Chris Rock. He wrote the racial draft on Chappelle. He was on that. He was in the sketch, the Black Quiz Show sketch about Lucy cigarettes. Like he wrote Black Jeopardy with Tom Hanks on SNL. He writes black stuff all the time. Why? Because black people trust him. Because he's like, hey, I get it, and I'm with you. And you're not going to have to worry in the back of your head that I'm going to go, well, maybe the officer has a point and you should follow his instructions. That's what we need more of. That's real allyship. And so as that happens, if more of those people are getting in there, then you're getting that representation. Then you're seeing that stuff happen because, again, it's like, sure, I know that casting is going to get diversified and those things are going to get diversified, but I want to see someone that I recognize myself in. And the example is you could have a white character in that exact same scene that I talked about where a guy's running through the store and the way he reacts to that cop and the way that he helps the guy who's running away, that can be black, even if he's not black. So that's what I want to see more of. And even beyond me, because I am a black, cis, straight man. There's a whole world of perspectives that I don't see or know, and I'm not going to pretend I do. And those people need to be brought to the table and brought in. And I think one place that's been done really well are the books. The High Republic books are, man, they diverse as hell, and then like the Ronin book, you have somebody doing gender affirming hormone therapy in a Star Wars book.
Yep.
So it's like, bro, we're blowing the doors open. Like we're going way down the track of diversity, which is awesome. And I'm here as black. I'm like, yo, this is so easy. Black ones is not that hard, and we all know what it is. So for me, it's like I've always loved Star Wars. I do love Star Wars. It was easy for me in the first movie because I grew up in Arizona. I was adopted. So for me, Luke Skywalker, it wasn't race. It was like, oh, he's adopted. He lives in the desert. He's like me. I wonder what my dad is like. Then I met my birth dad in my 20s. Turns out he was not as cool as Darth Vader. He was an advertising exec. Not as cool, but it's that thing of like I think there's a bright future in that there are so many talented people of color. There are so many talented black people out there, and as we're making more stuff, it's that they are people who are so talented they are trusted with millions of dollars. Because I do think there's a little bit of not a disconnect, but it's like, as a black person, it's easy for me to sit there and be like, why aren't you making this movie black? And it's because the black person, any black person on the other side of that is going, they just handed me $200 million. And if I mess it up, it's like Obama. We only get one. So if I mess it up, we're done. So this movie has to be good and they have to be happy with it. And they have to it's that thing of like, look, I was the second black person to ever write for Colbert. I was the second black person to write for John Oliver. I don't know how many black people wrote speeches for Star Wars Celebration, but I wrote one of those. That was fun. And in that you find out that trailblazing sucks and it's really hard. And usually you don't reap the benefits, and so as these people are doing that, It's going, look, let's build behind them with talent and build that wall of trust so that these people in these positions know, like, hey, these people are dedicated to their craft. They know what they're doing. I think, and a great example of that is Coogler, like Coogler with Black Panther. I got to interview him and Joe Robert Cole a couple weeks ago and talk about Wakanda Forever. And the thing is, like, he's so good that he's so good he can come in and go, this movie's going to be black. And they're like, well, you're very good. So all the stuff you make is amazing. So, okay, cool. Like looking at Wakanda Forever, because that's a great example of representation. And he did it twice. Like, Black Panther isn't a black movie because all the actors are black, because they have African accents. It's because every black person walks out of that movie going, wow, this is what white people feel like all the time. I mean, Feige has used that quote. Like, that's the most amazing part of Black Panthers. I've walked out, my friends are like, man, if every movie made me feel like this, I would feel like a white guy too. I'd be like, I can take on the world. Nothing can stop me. Because you walk out, you're like, whoa, Wakanda is dope. If Wakanda was real, I would go there now. I would apply for citizenship. And then he came back and represented a whole nother continent, a subcontinent. Like that. And as somebody who grew up in Arizona, like, I'm like, yo, my friends that are Mexican are like, dope. We feel seen. And those movies make $1 zillion. And so, this is a rambling answer, more than what I think. But it really is that I think that black people have had enough time getting inside the industry to become so good it's undeniable. And now it's going like, okay, one person gets in and now it's open and now it's open. And so now it is flipping those things open, and saying like, okay, so what more can we get? How much bigger can we make the Star Wars universe? Because that's the thing is, how are you going to tell a black story in a Star Wars universe that requires you to be able to say, what's black? What's black that's not earthbound?
Right.
What is black that's not chattel slavery, 1619, hip hop music, the culture, like Black Twitter? What is black that isn't any of those things? You as the writer have to be able to identify it. Then you have to be able to communicate it in your work, and it has to be understandable by a white audience. Not that they go, oh, we know this, but they can say, oh, we're seeing something, we're learning. I think in a way that Watchmen did very well, that Wakanda Forever did really well. So there is a lift there, but it's possible, and it's what's happening, and it's those things of the directors coming up, the writers coming up, the actors coming up. We're just in a place where eventually there is going to be a story that works in this universe. There's going to be, like in all of these IPs and places and things, there's going to be these stories that are transformative in what we think you can talk about and what you think you can do. Because I think so this is my last thing in this long rant, but I think a lot of the fear of pushback and the fear of like, oh, the fans and people don't like it. Like, all these movies made $1 zillion. Like they're making a bunch of money. People are going to Galaxy's Edge. Like, Star Wars is printing money. But
sure.
The other thing is that, like, people hated Empire Strikes Back. Fanzines shut down.
Correct.
Because they said Empire Strikes Back was not the spirit of Star Wars. Because it turned Leia into a Mary Sue. Whoa, good grief. Like, they were doing the red eye thing in 1981.
Correct.
So there have always been a group of fans, angry white dudes, who think they're screenwriters, who have been like, whatever's new is not Star Wars anymore. They shut the door behind them. I came in as a fan, nothing new. And that has happened from 1981, before I was born, to now. And so that's where it's like, I don't worry about the people that say that. I don't worry about the people that are like, well, the sequel trilogy ruined blah, blah, blah. Bro, Phantom Menace is not great. I saw it 9 times in the theater.
Correct.
Like, so anyway, sorry, that's my incredibly long monologue answer. I only know how to think in monologues as a late night.
That's okay.
But yeah, so I think we're in a good place. Let's to come all the way back around.
Absolutely. Well, and I really appreciate your thoughts, and I love hearing your perspective, certainly as a writer, as somebody who's worked in the entertainment industry, and getting that other perspective of it, getting that other side. It's not just who's on the screen, it's what's behind the screen. It's what gets it there. And I think you talked about being a trailblazer, and just to bring it full circle, because if there's anything that George Lucas said, it's poetry and that it rhymes. I talked about Ashley Boone Jr. at the top of the show, and he was the marketing exec that made Star Wars as successful as it was from a marketing standpoint. And he was a trailblazer. He was, doing something as a black man in the 60s and 70s in the entertainment industry that was unheard of, and lived a life and did a lot of things, worked on Ghostbusters, Thelma and Louise, other movies and things along the way that were big properties, but ultimately died in 1994 of cancer in relative obscurity. And he's not connected to really the bigger narrative of Star Wars outside of, the pockets of people who know about him. And that's another trailblazer thing. And so I think that you're hitting the nail on the head with something like that. So I love that Star Wars is also at a point that it is where we are seeing more of, whether it's Daniel Jose Old or Justina Ireland, whether it's the authors, whether it's, we want to see more of it in TV, in movies, like you're talking about with Lindelof. There's hope there. And if that's, another classic Star Wars thing, it's hope. Like there's more to come, and we're excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, wonder, that's the nicest thing is that it's never done.
Yeah.
It's never done. We always have more chances.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kerwin, what were you going to say?
Yeah. What I want to say is I wonder if the production companies, the movie distributors, still think that there's a myth, or believe the myth, that maybe films with black leads don't sell overseas. And I wonder if they're still holding on to that, and that's probably their fear of actually putting someone in front of the camera who, a person of color in front of the camera or behind the camera. But I think what has to happen is they need to see proof, right? So there's a reason why they would hire, what I suspect that Damon Lindelof is probably going to be the person behind the next Star Wars movie. Well, there's a reason why he was hired, because of The Watchmen, right? Because The Watchmen was such a big hit that it was groundbreaking, that it was able to transcend race. It wasn't just, people of color watching The Watchmen, or people of all colors watching and learning from it. So it feels that you have to be in a place where you have to prove yourself in order to get to that next level. Ryan Coogler, the same thing. It took him 3 or 4 movies before he can get to direct Black Panther. But they needed to see proof that, okay, well, if you're going to make a film with a person in the lead and have it be transcending and have people of all colors enjoy the movie, Creed, for example, then yes, here's the next step for you. Here, you get this film, you get to do Black Panther, you get to do the sequel. So I think it's a little bit of fear, and it's a little bit of, okay, well, has this been done before? I think that's what they're looking for. So as long as they can see that it's been done before, it has been successful, people of all colors enjoy it and love it, because that's what's going to make the movie, a blockbuster, right? It's not just going to be a certain race of people who are going to watch the movie and make it a big hit. Everyone has to buy into it, right? Yeah. So if we can just get to a point where they're seeing more of us behind the camera making films that are exceptional, and it's making money. It's making money in the U.S. It's making money overseas, and then you will see an influx of more filmmakers behind the camera coming up with more stories to tell, and then you're going to see more people of color in front of the camera as well. So it's just again, it's that myth that's still there. There's that fear that maybe this is not going to be successful. But if we continue to prove the opposite, right?
Well, I think one of the big, a big benefit, this is just a weird industry thing, is like, because China has now built up its film industry so much, they rely a lot less on American movies, which means our movies make less money there, which means we still care about it, but it is not the kind of leverage that there was before where it's like there is, like they just movies with non-white non-Chinese leads don't do well in China. But I think across the world, and especially in America, our audiences are growing and changing generationally, and also as people, where when my parents were alive and Kirk kissed Uhura, it was like, what? And now it's like they could do a lot more than kiss on television, and that you could show it. So TV changes, and when an audience is okay with changes, I think one of the things in this is to remember. I think remember as Black creatives is like, it's not our job to fix racism, because racism is a problem of the racists. That's actually who needs to get better. And this is not to say that all white people are racist, but the issue in this situation is that there's an audience who have been used to always seeing themselves, and they're very uncomfortable not seeing themselves. The answer to that isn't to make everything them. It's to teach them to be as comfortable seeing someone else as we are. I had to grow up either being the black side character, pretending I was a white person. As somebody said earlier, being Piccolo. Black people were like, oh, that's the different color guy in Dragon Ball Z. I guess that's me. We had to do that. Everybody who's non-white had to do that. And we still love it. We still love Star Wars. I still love Indiana Jones. I still love all these things. Flight of the Navigator, like all this weird nerd stuff, even if it didn't have a black person. It's saying, are we getting to a point culturally where there's a big enough white audience that goes, they don't have to look like me or sound like me or be where I'm from for me to imagine that I'm them. I think Miss Marvel was a great example of that. Jersey City, I've lived there. Jersey City, like it's way different than suburban America, so if our audiences grow as they are, and I think are growing and becoming more tolerant to those things, as they grow, it becomes less of a problem, because they go, Creed, everyone in that's black except for Rocky, fine, whatever. It's a boxing movie. It's not a black movie, it's a boxing movie. So I think it just is, there is a thing that's also changing, not just with the writers, not just with us being better, but with the people who before might have been a little hesitant, being more willing to change. I think a great example, this is my last rant thing again, but like Modern Family. When Modern Family started on TV, a gay couple on television was shocking. It was scandalous. It was whatever, And now it's like, no, it's nothing. Now those same audiences are like, yeah, okay, two people kiss, whatever, I don't care. Like, it doesn't do anything. And it's this, and so it's just growing in the same way of them seeing. I think Abbott Elementary is another example of that. It's a great show about a school. It's black. Quint is black as hell. But the audience has gone, that's fine. I'm a white suburban person in Indiana, and I still love it because schools are funny and teachers are funny, And so that we're getting to that point where it gets to past TV shows and past to those big blockbuster things where you go like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. There's a Star Wars movie and like they're all Native American, whatever. They're Native American Jedi. I don't care.
Right. Right.
So,
Greg,
positivity.
This has
That's
been.
What I have.
That's good. Thank you for joining us tonight. This has been so much fun. I really
Sorry
appreciate
I took up so much
insight.
time.
No. That's I knew when you texted this afternoon, and I knew you were interested in calling in. I knew this was one of the things that we wanted to talk about tonight, so it kind of worked out just perfectly. And I'm excited for your perspective, and I'm so thankful that you came on and shared with us. So we're going to send you on your way. We do this most Friday nights. We'd love for you to call in. And of course, we definitely want to encourage everybody to check out Yub Nub when they get back in another couple of weeks.
That's right.
For
March
sure.
1st.
Awesome. Good to see you, man.
Bye.
Later.
All right.
Kerwin didn't know when he agreed to be a guest host on this show that we were going to go 2 full hours tonight. But I'll be honest, this has been such a great conversation. Not only what we talked about with the Bad Batch, but getting to listen to you guys and to talk to Greg about Star Wars and what it means to you. Certainly, from the African American perspective. Thank y'all so much for sharing that. From my heart, I say thank you for being willing to be a part of that conversation. I know several people in the chat, somebody said, I think Brian said it, a great and important episode tonight. And that really is attributed to you guys and the conversation, the thoughts that y'all are willing to share. So we're going to wrap this thing up. I know people want to go to bed. We have other things. Some of us may be getting texts from inside the house. Hey, how much longer are you going to be on tonight? Before we get out of here, we would be remiss if we didn't do some plugs. And we're going to start with Kerwin. Kerwin, what do you guys have coming up on Father-Son?
Well, yeah, we have, we're still doing our Bad Batch weekly review. We're looking forward to March 1st. That's when The Mandalorian season 3 premieres. We're looking forward to that. We're going to, right now we have a live stream going on for the Bad Batch on Wednesdays, but that will change. As of March 1st, our live streams are now going to be The Mandalorian on Wednesdays, and then the second live stream on Thursdays for the Bad Batch. So that's starting March 1st. Outside of that, we've had some great guests lately. We are still editing, but we had a Cairo, who's a very popular content creator on YouTube. We also had Alex and Molly from Star Wars Explained. We were able to chat with them as well. So we have that coming up for you. We'll see. We also, this past week, we were attended a media exhibit. There was an exhibition at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. They have an exhibition called Disney 100. So this is the celebration of Disney 100 years. I don't know if you saw the commercial during the Super Bowl, but Philadelphia is the first place where you can see this exhibit. So if you're in the area, you can grab your tickets at the Franklin Institute. Look it up on their website. But we went, we saw it, we checked it out. It was wonderful. I mean, it was just so much to see. So we need to go back and look at it again. But it was just fun to be there. So that's what we have coming.
Awesome. Fantastic. Yeah. Again, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for hanging out with us and being a part of the show. You're certainly welcome back anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. And just thank you for allowing us the opportunity to even talk about, Star Wars and talk about, who we are as Star Wars fans. Our experience may be different to other people in the Star Wars community, but we love it just as much. So I just really appreciate that you gave us the time to actually have this room to talk about.
No doubt. Us
fans of Star Wars.
For sure. Christopher, Bro Axiom Network, what's going on this week? What do you guys have happening?
All right, so there's a new episode of the Star Bros podcast that is out right now. It's Ben and Jan, and they're talking about Order 66 and how its impact on the galaxy. And Ben brings up a point that got a little contentious in the comments, just a little bit, about how it is probably the most significant event, like a catalyst kind of event for like the Skywalker saga going forward. Was Order 66, and I have to agree. Let's see. Next week we've got 3 quick shots out. It's there's a High Republic Adventures book that is out. That's going to be coming out this Wednesday, as well as Yoda number 4 and Dr. Aphra number 29. I believe that's the number. So we got those quick shots that are going to be coming out. We're going to be previewing those books. BX Gaming on Tuesdays with Roke and Dan, and they're going to be doing their thing. And when Mandalorian comes around, Dan's show, the Dandalorian, will be back, and we'll be doing those. We'll be doing some shorts on that as well. So yeah, that's
outstanding. Outstanding, very, very good. Well, as for me in my house, the streaming Star Wars network, we have. We have a couple of things coming up. You mentioned earlier, Kerwin, Alex, and Molly. Pete and I are actually going to be on this coming Wednesday night for the Clone Zone for their Bad Batch recap show. So he and I are going to be doing that on Wednesday night on their channel. We're excited to hang out with them and talk about the next episode of Bad Batch. Also, we teased this before, but Match Game next Friday night. It's going to be a ton of fun. We're going to be silly. We're going to bring back some of our 70s nonsense. Like I said, I hope Pete has that long, skinny microphone. And that's going to be a bunch of fun. It'll be right here on this channel at 8:00 Central Time, 9:00 Eastern Time, usual, same bat time, same bat channel. Also, Thursday, we have a new episode of Around the Galaxy dropping, and we interviewed Kevin Thompson Kevin Thompson is basically all of the Ewoks that did things in Return of the Jedi. He's the one that took down all 3 of the chicken walkers. He's the one that blew the horn. He's the one that jumps off of the speeder bike and grabs the rope. He is, the group of little people that they used for Return of the Jedi for those Ewoks. He was, essentially a stunt person. It was really fascinating to get to hear these stories. He's got a book coming out that his wife helped him write. And so we interviewed the 2 of them, hearing those stories, hearing what it was like to be on set with Return of the Jedi. Lots and lots of fun. So that will be dropping Thursday. So a bunch of stuff coming out from Streaming Star Wars Network this week. And as Chris mentioned at the top of the show, if you want to find us on social media, Patreon, merchandise, anything like that, just go to streamingstarwars.com. You can find it all there. Thank you to everybody in the live chat for hanging out tonight. We had a great crowd. Thank you to all of our callers for being here. We always love hearing from all of you, from your perspective. And that's what we want this show to be. We want it to be the show where, the viewers and the callers are the guests. So it's been a great night. Gentlemen, I'm thankful for both of you. We're going to get out of here. And Chris, may the force be with you.
Always.
Just one more round, friend, then homeward bound, friend. Don't forget me in your dreams. Just one more song, friend, and then so long, friend. The nights get shorter, it seems. Just one more rhyme, friend. Yes, it's a crime, friend. But you know time, friend. Time can fly. So it's good night, friend. Good night, but not goodbye.